my passion of gardening. We have been involved with these helpers through FINS or HelpX for the last 15 years and have enjoyed the enthusiasm they bring. They constantly remind us to appreciate the beauty of our farm. While we have intensified our farming system, we have also been mindful of what is best suited for various classes of land. We also enjoy the diverse landscape and the altitude that an aspect bring. Using Overseer, it has been determined that we have a baseline leaching level of 11 kilograms of nitrogen per year. We have completed a farm environment plan, and this has identified the following. We have no permanent waterways leaving the property. We have, however, identified sediment runoff from our deer block as our biggest threat to the environment. To mitigate these losses, we have established sediment traps. A total of 50 hectares of exotic trees have been planted on areas that were previously growing gorse, and if cleared, these steep faces would have been susceptible to slipping. These were matched with the change in altitude, with pines being grown lower down and Oregons higher up, in areas that were more susceptible to snow and wind damage. 2 areas totalling 7 hectares have been set aside with native regenerating bush. These are being actively managed with the removal of pines and feral goats. We are proud of our landscape and of how we will leave it for the future.
23 years ago, we took on this property at Fairlie. We have continued to push and achieve production beyond our wildest dreams. We are proud of the business we have created. While it is diverse, it is profitable, resilient, and is working in harmony with our environment. It will always be a work in progress. With constant innovation in science and technology, the status quo will not be acceptable for long. We will continue to question, challenge and analyse, keeping our business at the forefront. We will continue to produce protein.
We would like to thank our sponsors, BNZ, Fern Farms, CTV, Reach Media, Lincoln University, Farmlands, Ravensdown and Hazlitt Rural Livestock, as without these organisations and their support of an event like this, it could not occur. Thank you.
You can't get off the stage yet. So, ladies and gentlemen, of course, that you'd have to suggest is a substantial family property that are doing their best for sustainability, which is a big question of the agri-sector throughout New Zealand these days. However, we've got 5 minutes left. They only went 32 seconds over. Is that all right, Sebastian? Thank you. So we've got questions from the floor. We've got 5 minutes to ask of the Campbell family, and they will obviously answer those as best as they can as part of the competition. So feel free to ask a question, please. Is everyone too scared to? Here, I'll get one over here. Let's bring the mic over.
Your diversification of your business, I'm just interested in the process you went through to get there from that graph of your 3 points of income to the 6.
Well, I guess we were looking for greater earning ability per kilogram of dry matter and per hectare, and we were looking also at fits with the environment. The arable crops at the bottom and the valley floor, they're on our best soils, so it seemed a good fit to put them there. There was the least amount of rain. Grass, it's about suiting grass species as well, not just stock species. It's the plants you grow. Grass needs regular rainfall to grow good dry matter, whereas you can establish an arable crop in the autumn and it's relatively resilient and we can obtain good yields, so that was sort of a fit there. Obviously the deer with their later fawning, they fitted the higher altitude country. It was a work in progress, it didn't happen overnight. But it won't be without change either. So, I don't know whether that answers you or not, but we looked at earning ability, but then it's got to fit the country as well.
Anyone else got a question? Oh.
Hi Neil, Patrick Aldwell here. Really good to see you here. Neil, question for you is, what do you expect your place to look like in, let's say from a financial point of view, in about 5 years' time? How are you expecting things to look there financially?
Well, hopefully it won't be any weaker than what it is today. I believe we won't see capital gains in the next 10 years like we've seen in the last 10. So we're not farming for capital gains. I think we'll look back in 10 or 15 years' time and look back at this last 10 or 15 years as a period of phenomenal capital growth. So we're not farming for that. I guess we're waiting to see what family do and how we can assist them. We've got a good asset that we can leverage off. So financially, I can only see us getting stronger, hopefully, Patrick. But yeah, we're certainly not relying on capital gain to do it. And well, I suppose from when we started in the 80s, I never paid any principal back on land until about 5 years ago. And I've started paying principal back on land. So that's sort of an indication of... but to be fair, we developed out of income all our life, so that was sort of our income equalisation scheme. So the bulk of... and unless we alter our land use a lot and we need some development, you know, there shouldn't be any heavy demands on capital, so, yeah.
Do you measure grass weekly or to monitor stock coming and going on your property when you're trading, or is it more of a fixed gut feel?
We measure it on the shoulders of the season or when we're facing shortages. Because we rotationally graze everything, it's very easy to quickly identify surpluses and deficits. I'll give full credit to Mark, our last stock manager. He was a real natural at it, and I'm having to upskill myself a bit at the moment. But no, we don't physically measure it except on the shoulders of the season, you know, especially if you've got drought or whatever. But it's something we should perhaps be doing.
We're going to have to wrap up those questions, ladies and gentlemen, so I think a big round of applause for the Campbell family. And just be careful going down these stairs. Congratulations. Well done, Ryan. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to watch a presentation from our gold sponsor, the BNZ. The BNZ guys are over here, guys and girls, is that what they say now? So, if we could have their presentation before our next contestants take the stage. So, thank you.
Head of agribusiness for the BNZ, and we've been banking New Zealand farmers for a long time, over 150 years, and we've seen the ups and downs of the industry and been there for the ride. We like the South Island Farmer of the Year competition because it really shows up the best of New Zealand farming in regards to people that largely have grown their business successfully. And, you know, the country's about growth, and we're about supporting growth. And the key thing around winners of this competition and entrants in this competition is they've shown an ability to grow, but also with sustainability. And that's really important for New Zealand's future. You know, in regards to our ability to export quality product to around the world, and our ability to continue to provide a greater standard of living for the average New Zealander. And that's why we're supporting South Island Farmer of the Year.
My turn. I think on behalf of the BNZ Bank, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate your sponsorship and thank you very much for the hard work you've been doing. Thank you. Sorry about that, everyone. I didn't get the key from my producer. Don't do this every year. Right. Now then, we've got a family that have driven a long way today or this evening or this afternoon. I'm not sure when they got up here, but they're from the Maniatoto or the Ranfurly. I'd like to welcome to the stage the Shaw family, and representing them, of course, is Geoff and Lauren Shaw. And I would like them to come up, and please respect our contestants, ladies and gentlemen, and make sure those jolly phones are either on silent or turned off. So Geoff and Lauren Shaw, please come on up. Thank you very much. You go for it there, and then you've got Bell 14 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, David. Well, firstly, I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight. I hope you're enjoying your early part of the evening just as much as we are. Firstly, some introductions. My name's Geoff, as you well know, and Lauren, that's my wife. And we have a son named Bradley, who is 9 years old, going on 15. And he's at home with the neighbours tonight, enjoying himself with friends. We would like to tell our story, and as all good stories are, they have a beginning, a middle and an end. Well, an end for you guys tonight is just here, but for us, it's a work in progress. But before we start all that, I'd like to give you some fun facts. We run 840 hectares in the Maniotato, as you heard. 700 hectares, which we initially bought in 2000, is a couple of k's above Ranfurly on the way to Naseby, and we acquired 140 hectares in 2011, just a couple of k's below Ranfurly. We run at about 500 metres above sea level, which is sort of 480 to 580. Our average rainfall is about 500 mils, with a couple of drought years of 350 to 300 mils. And we get to the dizzying heights in the wet years of up to about 650 mils. So it's quite hard in our area. It's all dry land. We don't have any irrigation at all. The topography is all flat to rolling, which is all effective, and all cultivatable, which we've done. So that's very much the background of who we are, or where we are. And we'd like to start our story at the beginning, obviously, and that's the beginning of a background to where we got to in 2000. Lauren here was a townie, a Dunedinite, she was through and through, and upon leaving school she worked in accounts clerk in a big firm, which will give us, our business, a brilliant skill set to use today. I myself was born and bred on a dryland sheep and beef farm in an area called Stoneburn, which is 20 minutes inland from Palmerston and East Otago. Schooled locally, primary schooled locally, and secondary schooled in Dunedin. And upon leaving there, I came home to work on the farm. But I travelled to Dunedin to still play sport, and this is where we met. This is where I met my lovely Lauren, because we had both things in common, and we both played sport, and that was cricket, and that's where we met on the sports field. Now, we both played to a reasonable level for Otago, our province. Lauren played for Otago at first class level, and myself at age group. Now, that sounds a bit like a bit of boasting, but what cricket taught us was self-discipline and work ethic, which would come in very handy as time wore on as we starting in our farming career. So in the first 5 years of travelling up and down to Dunedin, we decided, OK, it looks like we're going to stay together, and so we have to try and do the farming thing to make sure that everyone's happy with the farming arrangement. So we then worked on a couple of farms preceding 2000, one in West Otago for 6 months, and the second one was just down the road in Hinds for 5 years, between 95 and 2000, on an excellent mixed cropping farm with very good people where they could do the cropping and we did the sheep work. We, as I said, did that for 5 years, and we seemed to be reasonably compatible. There was no arguments in the sheep yards, no thing. So upon that, we decided we were heading towards our 30s and it was time to own. So my parents and ourselves were looking for farms, and it was my parents that found a farm in the Maniotato where we are today. It had very good infrastructure. It was very good fencing. It had good fertiliser, and there was troughs to every paddock. So when we looked over it, we thought it was very much ravaged by the 98 drought. So it was just roll your sleeves up and get on with it sort of stuff. So when we arrived, we took over all the sheep that were there, which were quarter breds, which are about the 21, 22 micron. But we quickly changed them into Corridales. We were lucky enough to get genetics from award-winning farmers, which was our parents, and we got on with changing them very quickly. And so we ran 3,000 ewes, 1,000 hoggets, this was wintered, and we bought about 20 to 30 heifer calves at a local calf sale, beef calves. So there was only a couple of things we really needed to do on the farm in the first 8 years we were working away, and that was build a brand new wool shed. I don't think so it was a brand new wool shed, covered yards, and also we needed to, and that was about it. We were lucky enough to get a water scheme that started up because we were just on windmills and pumped water at that stage, but a local water scheme started up, which was an absolute godsend to us. We could just get it to one point and everything on farm infrastructure was done. So in the first 8 years, we had to renew all the pasture mix. And we started off with a coastal ryegrass mix, ryegrass white clover. And I must admit I was very naive to farming in a 450 to 500 mil rainfall. I had never experienced that before, but after the first year I learned very quickly, well, this is not going to work. And so upon advice from our local spray contractor, who said, why don't you do what other parts of the Maniotato do and put in lucerne? I thought, oh, geez, what didn't I think of that? So we got on. I said, well, who's the best farmer that I could ring? He told me a name. We got his grass mix and his lucerne mix, and away we went. And so that's our journey for the next sort of 8 years, and that was regrassing 15 to 20% of the farm. Gravel flats all went into straight lucerne with a bit of lucerne cocksfoot mixes, and the good soil and rolling country went into lucerne grass mixes. And as I said, that was our pattern for the first 8 years. We were shifting breaks, making hay, feeding it out, mainly basically feeding from about March onwards. And as I said, break feeding, and about 8 or 9 breaks we were shifting each winter. But in 08, on the last break that we shifted, breaking our ankles again and froze the ground trying to get them all in, I turned to Lauren and said, well, if you want to stick with this farming system, do you still see yourself doing this in 5 years' time? And the answer was an emphatic
no.
No, it was not. So there was a few other decisions we were not happy with at the time of what was happening. We put a lot of hard work into sheep at that stage, and I was getting a bit disillusioned with it, with not getting rewards for it. Our time management wasn't great. The farm by that stage, after 8 years, was 80 and 90% up, all the new mixes. So if we were going to carry on, we were going to have to put into work up all the newer paddocks again. So the system had to change. So how do we change the system without hurting the back pocket? And at that stage, we thought, well, this is where dairy grazing was starting to come into play. And dairy grazing for us means taking on the 100-kilo dairy heifers or bull calves or whatever in about December and take them through to May. So we decided to embark on this system, but our plan B was going to be that each year that the annual draft ewes came out, we got more dairy stock, because if we saw it wasn't going to work, we could then go back in to the Corridales again without getting rid of all the sheep, holus bolus. So in the next couple of 3 years, we worked on this, bringing in dairy heifers and dairy bull calves to graze and taking out the ewes at the same time. 08 was a great year to start because we were in a raging drought. It was the first time we sold store lambs. We We were able to get, in December of that 08 year, we got rid of all the ewe lambs, all the tudus, and got down to the nitty-gritty, basically. I think in the month of December, I think we had about 9 or 10 different transport companies come in for that year. So not a good side, but something that we've stuck with firm and thought, well, this is our plan, and away we go. So in the next 2 or 3 years, we embarked on, as I said, on this journey of bringing in the dairy heifer calves and what have you. And we saw after a while, after the 2 or 3 years, that this was going to work and was going to work very well for us. And so as of today, what we do now, we decided to say, okay, we'll have enough capital stock to be able to cover all our expenses we need. By this stage, the farm was up and running very much. We didn't need much capital work go into the farm. So if a raging drought came along, we couldn't get any dairy stock or our grazing stock, then we had enough to cover us for a year without hurting ourselves too much. So right now, the system is actually running very smoothly, and it's with 700 crossbred ewes, which we put to the terminal sire, and we buy in about 120, 130 beef weaners at calf sales, mainly steers, or all steers virtually. We have a few trading stock as well on top of that. So with the advent of the system which we have today, which is seems to be working very, very well for us, we decided to buy in 2011 another 140 hectares, which is the bit just below Ranfurly. Now that was to back up the home farm. It had very good lucerne on it that we could cut and carry up to home. It was heavier soils on the flat, and we could take lambs down to there or whatever we wanted to do. Basically, we haven't needed to do that. We actually use it just as a sole grazing block, really. So that was a very good acquisition for us to complement the home farm. So really, basically, that's about us. I think, in summary, when we look back, the first 10 years, it was very hectic for us, but it was first 10 years gain for 20 years, first 10 years pain for the 20 years gain down the track, where we could just maintain the farm and have it in good stead today. We are able to have better time management now, better cash flow. We winter numbers down and spring and summer up numbers now, because our biggest cost in our business earlier on was our wintering cost. Having to make all the hay to feed it out in the winter, and some years, or in 1 year I remember made 28 bales when I needed 1,028. So in came the guys up here in Hines and please can we have some grass seed straw. So it was a tough sort of system, but we have now adapted the system to have a better, as I said, a better cash flow, but a better system to fit our feed curve. We really do have the grass and that ahead of us now, that it's all about the weather and the seasons to make sure that we're ready for the worst case scenario. And for us, the worst case scenario is a big drought. So the farm is ready now and resilient to face our worst case scenario. So that's pretty much us, to be quite honest. It's a system, as I say, that we're enjoying doing now. We were able to get to all of our sons' cricket or whatever he's doing on the mornings. So our time management now is a hell of a lot better and a lot more relaxed as it was in those earlier years. We never employed anyone. It was just all the work was done by ourselves with a few contractors, and they were just doing the main shearing and silaging and spraying and that sort of thing. But all the groundwork and everything was done by ourselves. So at 15 to 20% every year, we were head down, arse up and into it. So it was a good system. So in conclusion, I hope that sort of ends our story to date, but for you guys, but not for us. The farm we also bought, the 140 hectares, was also a thought of succession planning. As I said, our son's now 9, so in 10 years' time, obviously 19. We'll be heading towards 60. Would have had enough for farming by then. It's never that long. Actually, it's quite right. It's never that long, 10 years. You think it is, but it does creep up on you very, very quickly. So we're in a position to be able to have succession planning. We'll probably retire down the bottom block, build and retire in Bradley, and we've got options up our sleeve to structure whatever we want to do and what Bradley and the family wants to do. So therefore, that ends our story. But there's one last thing that we would like to say. It might be a wee bit of food for thought, or a wee bit of perhaps, but we wanted to leave you with a phrase or a saying or a few words that I think sums us up as people. And it's a saying that we use a lot in sport, which we are now both golfers, and also in life in general, to portray to our son Bradley, and especially in our farming business, especially under our conditions. And that's a saying, there's no problems, only solutions. Thank you very much, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Well done, Geoff and Lauren. Good on you. I don't know, but no doubt everyone's been to the Maniatoto, but if you've been there in the middle of the winter, when there's a minus 4 degrees, I was in the Ranfurly motels once and the shampoo froze, let alone the men's. So, questions. Someone must have a question for these people here. There we are, over here.
Hi, I'm Victoria. I'm here with the Kellogg Rural Leadership Program, actually also from the Maniatoto, so I understand the climatic conditions that you're dealing with. Yeah. You mentioned that you have sort of that buffer in the system where if things don't go to plan, you've got the capital stock to cover what you need to cover for the year. What other strategies do you have for dealing with those pretty major climatic events you can have, and what advice would you give to other farmers in the same position?
Okay, well, it's having feedy headia, and basically we're in a snow line in the 700 hectares we are, and we've had a couple of snow events up to about 12 inches in a couple of years, and that's all about having silage in the pit and having all that ahead of yourselves, having a storage, either a storage of feed or a year, 2 years. In fact, a pit we probably won't use for 50 years, and that's fine with us. It's for a rainy day? No, for a non-rainy day, really, and so we got contingencies ahead of ourselves. You know, like, for example, I think in the last 2 seasons in the Maniatoto, it's been very dry, summer dry, and a lot of the guys who are traditional farmers were selling store lambs and having a tough time of it. We actually took on 3,000 ewes to graze for people. So that's where it sort of pricked their ears up and said, okay, this is really working. You know, we're actually ready for a situation because we're getting feed ahead of ourselves. This year we're taking on some dairy stuff if we can find them, which we can. We're in a pretty good situation at the moment. So that's the sort of things we're sort of really ready for. You know, it might have been quoted somewhere, not rocket science. We just try and do the basics very, very well. Stuff that go in the ground that suits the ground conditions, which suits the climatic conditions, which suits, and the stocking rate on top of it, which suits it, and giving us a very good coin in the back pocket, basically. And as I said, we're really enjoying doing that. So, yeah, thanks for your question. Good.
Any further questions? Over here.
Hi, Joanna Scott. I'm also in the Kellogg Rural Leadership course. I'm originally from North Otago. Just wondering, you mentioned you changed from Corriedales into crossbreds ewes. Just wondering what production changes that you noticed from changing those breeds, and how did you measure that?
Yeah, very good question. The Corries, I'll give a background. The Corriedales we had scanned 180%, and survival to sale was 131. Now, that is a big significant drop, but we felt in the Maniatoto at that stage, if we could finish 131%, which we were doing to above 21 kg lambs, I think we're doing pretty tidy. So Changing from them to the crossbreds, yes, the crossbreds, hey, they were doing 180%, but they're holding onto the lambs a bit more. They're about 155 survival to sale. And those lambs are terminal size, and we're looking to them to 22 kgs as finishing. That's the only parameters I can give you because that's the facts, and that's what I see so far. The Corriedale produced a very, very good lamb, as a half-bred does. I don't call them half-breds, they're not half-breds, they're Corriedales. And mid-micron, so they produced very good lambs. Not saying the crossbreds didn't. The crossbreds are a lot sort of smaller sheep, but very efficient. The Corries were very, very well-framed ewes. So that's the only parameters I can give you. I hope that answers your question, really. That's what we've noticed. Okay, so yeah.
With the Lucerne,
Mm-hmm.
bit of a wonder farm for you, Neil mentioned quite a bit. You've got Lucerne.
Yes.
What's it done to your live weight gains, to your cattle growth rates?
Yeah, okay. Yes, well, state take last year in pretty much a dry season, our steers that we take through, or the calves we buy, we take them through the first winter. And then we take the tops out before the second winter, so about 40 or 50 or 60, and the rest go to the second one. Now, when I weighed them from the last weight in about the 1st of September through to about May, through all that time, the cattle put on about 1.1, 1.2 Ks, all through even the dry and the February dry. And that's fact. That's fact. So I think we're doing okay. We were getting the cattle away 300 kilos plus. I mean, they were 320s, 330s. And I think it did weight, yeah. In our system, in our rainfall, I think that's not too bad. I mean, you're a consultant, you'll know what we're talking about. So as far as, and Lucerne, as far as lamb live weight gain, we were on a Lucerne for Lambs project that Derek Moot and David Stevens from Ag Research came along and did in the 08 to 10 season. Probably a couple of years before that. And the 3 years there anyway. And so we, with a lot of other good farmers in the area of here and over the Ida Valley, which is near Omakau, we were doing a live weight gains in sheep and lambs on Lucerne. And we were getting upwards towards 350 to 400s, easy, a good year. You've got to remember the Maniatoto's got great sunshine hours. And you can really produce a lamb there because it's got outstanding sunshine hours. As long as it's got the feed and the good feed below it, you can really grow some stock in the Maniatoto. I believe that, I'm an outsider coming in. They all said, there's a lot of minerals in the ground, but I believe the feed is dry, so every bite they take is spot on. It's not shooting out the back end sort of thing and water soluble. So it is the Lucerne we find is as would Derek Moot say, Dr. Derek, godsend plant, I think it's called, and it's certainly revitalised our system, and that's why we went on that Lucerne for lambs, because we wanted to push the good word, if you know what I mean. We were very surprised how much in the Maniatoto actually wasn't. They had Lucerne to cut and carry, but not to graze, and we were very surprised. There was a couple of farmers of us from the outside looking into that, so we wanted to perhaps spread the good word and change it a wee bit, but who knows. Thanks, Andy.
Ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up Geoff and Lauren Shaw's presentation. So I think a big round of applause for our people from the Maniatoto. Thank you. Well done, mate. Give them a book of words and I'll just tell you what's happening next, okay? So stay tight. Right, at this stage of the evening, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a breather. All right, you can rub shoulders, charge your glasses, go to the bar, okay, and sort of mingle and mix a bit. As I mentioned at the start of the evening, the toilets for for gentlemen and ladies, the lavatories are out through the double doors. Okay, your meals will be brought to your tables, not like last year, okay. And we would look to be reconvening back here at around 7:15. So, yeah, get together, meet some new people, enjoy the evening, because that's a big part of why we're here as well. Thank you very much and well done. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. Keep eating. As we're marching on through the evening, we encourage you all to continue eating and listening as we move on to the next part of our evening. We've run a little bit behind time, but not too bad, so no panic. And on we go. So we're now I'm going to ask Mr. Steve McGaughan, who's the CEO for CTV, to come up beside me, and when he comes up, we'll set alight their video. As you know, CTV are again a very, very good sponsor of this event. They're a gold sponsor, so again, we don't take our sponsors for granted. So I'd like you to welcome Mr. Steve McGaughan, ladies and gentlemen, to the stage, and we'll have a look at
Some people know
video.
us only as The Star, but Star Media encompasses so much more. Broadcasting, events, magazines, digital, and of course, newspapers. It's what Star Media is all about. This includes CTV programs, CTV productions, events, magazines, community publications, and of course, The Star. All under one umbrella. And when it comes to news, one of Star Media's core values is that good journalism should always be free to the public. And because of our broad range of media, our key strength is integration. See it in print, watch it on TV, discover it online. It's all made easy. Star Media, connecting Canterbury people, businesses and communities.
Thank you, Greg. Good evening, everybody. Star Media and CTV, we're very pleased again to support this event, the South Island Farmer of the Year. Our team at Star Media and CTV, we feel privileged to align ourselves with an event that recognises and promotes excellence in farming and especially business and innovation. And I think another thing I've seen tonight is also adaptability. It's amazing what people have presented so far tonight. We have our team here tonight from rural New Zealand, and they are roving around to look for ideas on our next show, and that goes to air next Wednesday on CTV at 7:30. Star Media Productions are also here tonight, and we're live streaming this. We're making you all famous, and hopefully people are watching it from their farm or around New Zealand through the Lincoln University site. Our Rural New Zealand show on CTV has profiled many of you that are here tonight. There's some really innovative ideas that have been created by some pretty special people. Scotty, our host, behind Rural New Zealand, said to me he knows many of you here tonight and he's been amazed what he's seen. I'd just like to finish by wishing all the finalists good luck. Thank you.
So there you go, ladies and gentlemen, our CTV, owned and operated in this area, but obviously reaching most parts of the South Island and into the wider New Zealand. So we thank you very much for your sponsorship. Our next contestant, ladies and gentlemen, I've had a bit of a chat with him and he's given me permission to present himself and his family and what he does whilst we continue to eat. Mr. James Dicey, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome him to the stage. You got your wee beeper there for your presentation.
Thank you very much. I might just have to raise the mic a little bit.
Yes.
Sorry, that's your job as MC to sort of get the audience going. So sorry about that. I've stolen a little bit of your thunder. Hi, my name's James Dicey. I'm a grape grower from Central Otago. You might be able to tell from the colour of my shirt. Not quite normal, no check, no stripes here tonight. So we'll see how my presentation goes. My journey into farming is a little bit different compared to everybody else. I actually swore I'd never be a farmer. We arrived in this country as immigrants from South Africa in 1977 with $250 stuffed in my mum's bra. And we started from scratch. My parents have scraped, have worked, have made their own luck. And I remember as a teenager, as a 14-year-old, watching 40% of our income go that year. We were growing kiwi fruit in the Bay of Plenty. There's a thing called proximity marks when they rub together. We had a storm just before we were harvesting, and 40% of our crop disappeared in that one night. My dad turned grey, and I swore I'd never go farming. Not without equity and not without skills to be able to do it properly and do it justice. So here I am as one of the contestants in the South Island Farm of the Year finalists. It's been a bit of a rocky road and a bit of a different divergent path from where I started, swearing I'd never to be a farmer, to standing here in front of you presenting what I'm doing today. So let's just see if we can carry on with this and if this clicker can work. So who am I and what do we do? I run 3 businesses. The first one is Grape Vision, up there on the top left. Grape Vision is based in Central Otago. It's a vineyard development, vineyard management, wine brokerage and viticultural consultancy company. We also run Series Wines, which is our brand from our vineyards. And I actually notice on all the brochures and pamphlets, it's got Mount Difficulty Wines Limited on it. That's not actually who I am. I grow all their grapes and my brother Matt makes their wine. But Series is our family brands from our family vineyards. We grow Pinot Noir, Pinot Gris and Riesling. And my brother Matt is not only the winemaker at Mount Difficulty, but he's also our winemaker as well at Series. Bespoke Wines is the third leg of the stool. Bespoke Wines is a wine distribution company, and it's a cost-neutral basis, where we just share costs to be able to afford to put a salesperson on the road. It's quite easy to grow good grapes. It's quite easy to make good wine, but it's actually bloody difficult to sell it. And we put this together to help share the cost of a salesperson. So I'm just going to run into a little bit more detail about these 3 companies before sharing with you my journey and what I believe it takes to be a good farmer. So Grape Vision was established in 1996 by my father when he moved to Central Otago. My sister-in-law, Ali, works in the company as well. I currently employ 32 full-time equivalents. My oldest driver who works for me is 83. The most recent guy that I took on is 68. We've got a couple of 18-year-old kids coming out of MSD as well, so a whole range of different people who work for me. I also employ anywhere between 4 and 94 Vanuatuan staff under the RSE scheme, and they're full-time seasonal as well. Currently we've got 275 hectares approximately under management that's constantly changing. And I also perform consultancy on a number of other clients in Central Otago as well. That's spread over 35 different vineyards for 15 different clients, pretty much all focused in Central Otago, and the majority of what we do is focused on Pinot Noir. Series Wines, which is the next leg of the stool. As I said before, it's family vineyards. It's in partnership with my brother Matt, with my wife Adele, who does all the design, who does the art, works in the cellar door, and also has a gallery there as well. We also have a strong relationship with Mount Difficulty, and I often get confused for being Mr. Mount Difficulty. I grow all their grapes for them, and they make their wine, my wine, for me as part of Series. And we lease our vineyards to Mount Difficulty and have the right to sort of cherry pick the best of what our vineyards have delivered that year, and that goes into our wine. And it's a situation that works very well because I don't have to finance it, which is buy the finished wine and get to cherry pick the best of that as well. We distribute in New Zealand, in the UK and in the US. Currently doing about 1,500 cases, which is not a huge amount. We have aspirations to grow to about 15,000 cases, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. We've got an established track record of success. Probably the thing I'm most proud of is for my 2010 Pinot Noir. We won in 2013 the International Wine and Spirit Competition, Pinot Noir in London, and that actually secured my UK distribution as well. And Series is going to be an increasing part of what we do in the future. Last but not least is Bespoke Wines, and as I said to you before, it's a cost-sharing basis. I established that in 2010 when I actually realised that my clients, some of my smaller clients who couldn't afford their own salespeople, needed to be able to sell their wine and not just make it. Wine's a very capital-intensive business, and unless you're selling your grapes as wine, it's very difficult to make a profit in this game. So I've currently got a portfolio of 4 brands, 4 of my client brands in there, plus my Series Wines as well. So who am I, and what's my journey been? As I said to you before, as a teenager, I wanted to take a different path, and I did. I'm currently 46. I'm married to my lovely wife Adele, who unfortunately can't be here tonight. My folks, who my usual babysitters, got stuck on the wrong side of the ditch and couldn't make it home in time. So she's at home watching this on the web, I think, at the moment. So hi, kids. I'm ex-South African, and why is that important? Apart from my occasional accent and where the word series comes from, which is the region we're from, I believe it brings an immigrant mentality. Starting off with nothing and seeing your parents struggle with nothing actually gives you a bit of your fire in your belly and gives you a bit of drive. And I believe that's what I've got, and that's where I think a lot of that comes from as well. I studied university at University of Otago. I did a BCom LLB. After determining I wasn't going to go farming, I thought accountancy was a much safer gig, and perhaps seeing the shirt that I'm wearing tonight, you can understand perhaps I'm not cut from the right cloth to be a chartered accountant. Very much a square peg in a round hole, or maybe the other way around. I'm never quite sure how to express that. So I ended up working for Deloitte in Dunedin, or Deloitte Touche Ross, or Deloitte Touche Tomatsu as it was in those days, now just Deloitte. I'm actually a qualified chartered accountant. Practiced for 6 years in Dunedin, in Amsterdam and in London. And then .com 1.0 came along, and I went out and jumped into boots and all into a consultancy career and worked both in London, mostly in London, but also ended up in Saudi Arabia for 3 very traumatic and interesting months. Most of my background is in financial audit and IT audit, but we got sick and tired, or certainly Adele, my wife, got sick and tired of living in London and said, I'm going home. I'm going to Central Otago, which is where I want to live. I've got an affinity with that place, and I'm going home. You can either carry my handbags or you can stay, so I did the right thing. So I carried the handbags back to New Zealand and came back and decided that I wanted to join my father in the viticulture industry rather than being a small-time chartered accountant. I really was a square peg in a round hole. So I came back and joined his business in 2004. He said to me at the time, you go to university and you get the technical qualifications. So I actually came here to Lincoln. I was actually originally here in 1988 as part of the Easter Tourney and came back in 1992. This place has changed significantly since when I was first here in 88, and I must say for the better. Not so many dippies here these days, which is, I think, probably a good thing. So I'm now a qualified viticulturist. I've been doing it for 12 years. I'm, as I said before, Central Otago and Pinot Noir based, and I've been working with my father and trying to learn from him and gain from his 50 years of experience. So what does it take to be a grape farmer? In my case, a wine farmer. I think there are a lot of different approaches you can take in this. And what I've tried to highlight in here is what I believe the points of difference are. I'm aware that I'm probably talking to a bunch of sheep and beef, traditional pastoral farmers, so I'm not going to actually talk about my farming systems, because I think, all due respect, it's probably going to go over your heads. I'm talking about some of the detailed technical stuff. I don't see any of my university lecturers here from viticulture school, which is probably a good thing anyway. So for me, it comes down to 5 key things: striving to do better, team, relationships, industry leadership, and clarity of goals and certainty of purpose. So striving to do better. If I can get this thing to work. First thing, I think you've got to do the basics well, and they're a given. I wouldn't be up here if I was just doing the basics. I think you have to have great technical capability, recognise expertise. When I've appeared in court as an expert witness on more than one occasion, a fairly traumatic experience the first time around, but I'm getting better at it. I think my chartered accountancy provides some additional skills over and above just as a pure viticulturist. I understand P&Ls, balance sheet, cash, working capital, leverage, debt to equity ratios, key performance indicators, and I've also got quite some significant international business capability, and I already think that helps round out what I'm doing in the viticulture area. For me, the next one is quite important, the pursuit of perfection. It's quite a high and sort of an aspirational goal. You're destined to fail if you want to achieve perfection all the time. And you need to be prepared to fail, but to learn and grow from those experiences. And that's really the attitude that I try to bring with what I'm doing at the moment. If we continue to focus that as the goal that we're trying to do and learn from our failures and grow from them and do better the next time round, that's where wisdom and experience comes from. And that's really what I'm trying to fast track with what I'm doing. I also have a relentless thirst for knowledge. The reason I've got 50 questions up there, I was renowned at university for asking way too many questions, and when we were on our tour to the North Island, on my 50th question for the day, the rest of the class burst out in spontaneous applause and actually hoots of derision, if I'm actually honest about it, because that was my 50th question for the day. That pursuit of knowledge, the thirst for understanding, the relentless pursuit of perfection is what drives me. I sound like a bit anal retentive up standing up here, but I do actually have a bit of a sense of humour as well, hopefully evidenced by the T-shirt as well. But it's also about recognising where you don't have strength, and I'm quite happy and prepared to pick up the phone and ask for help where I need it. And I think as you learn and grow, as you go a little bit older, you actually recognise you can't do everything and can't be everything to all people. Next for me is adoption of appropriate technology. Precision viticulture is sexy at the moment. We use things called EM38, which is ground penetrating radar. It's actually a capacitance radar, but we've chosen not to use drones or NDVI. We just don't think that the technology is right or ready for us to be able to make decisions that we can actually make changes on. I use a product called AgriMaps, which I think they've actually been a finalist at these awards before. It's a great tool, but it doesn't do sub-meter GPS, so we're inventing or working with a local surveyor to be able to do that for asset management. Trying to find a pipe under the ground or a join under the pipe underground is actually quite difficult 10 years later, and that's what this is going to be used for. Sustainability is another key tenet to what we do as well. I believe we really need to improve the land we're connected with, and that's not only the land that I own and farm, but everything that I do has got a sustainability bent. And we practice genuinely triple bottom line reporting as well and accounting for what we do. Again, a continuous focus on quality. Wine is a very subjective beast. It's not kilograms of dry matter. It's not wool clip. It's based on opinions of opinion seekers and consumers who can be quite a fickle lot. So to be able to compete and succeed in the international arena, we really have to focus on quality. And for me, that's driven by understanding my environment, geology, soil maps, climate, grapevine phenology, or how the grapevine grows, water scheduling and nutrients. We're heavily into overseer at the moment and understanding whether that works or doesn't work for what we're doing. And unfortunately, it doesn't work in the grape context. 2 kilograms of nitrogen per tonne of grapes produced. We don't have to add a lot of nitrogen. But where we do, we use things like lucerne. Thanks, Derek Moot, for your great work in that area as well. And the other key thing where I believe we gain a lot of competitive advantage is to continually improving what we do through innovation. I run a lot of research and development trials in Central Otago. They're all statistically replicated. We employ a statistician to do that. It's on areas or particular questions or hypotheses we want to test with what we're doing. And I've run trials with biochar, which you may or may not have heard of. We're just building a biochar or a pyrolysis oven at the moment. I've developed a worm farm. We've done replicated trials with that at the moment. Developed in technology as well, undervine mowers, net winders, weed spray rigs even. So done trials on late shoot thinning, pruning methods, and actually currently working on with New Zealand wine growers on a low alcohol trial. It's a key point and a key bastion of what we do. But it's not the only thing. A critical other one is getting a right team around you, and that includes specifically the support of my wife and my kids, my partnership with my brother, learning from my father, and working with my sister-in-law, Alison. It's a team environment, and we really try and foster that, not only at the family, but with my staff as well. I work very hard to empower the staff so that they feel entitled and able to make decisions, and they're very loyal with me as well. And that comes back to a point of mutual respect. So we do things like pay rain time when it's too wet, and we'll actually pay them for that. The Southern Cross Health Scheme we run, barbecue, sports tournaments, and I have a huge focus on health and safety as well. Second last, almost there, relationships, for me multi-dimensional, very important, both with owners, with staff, with media, consumers, the list goes on and on. It's a very collaborative, communication-based approach where we try and develop partnerships with mutual benefit for all parties, and that's with networking as well. The last thing for me is industry leadership. I'm currently a director of New Zealand Wine Growers with a focus on research, sustainability and finance. I am also an ex-director of Seasonal Solutions, a labour importer. We've grown that company from 120,000 a year to 23 million a year. We've doing work with the Vanuatuans as well, with Cyclone Pam and building resilience as well. Director of Mount Difficulty Wines, we've grown that business massively, and Central Otago Wine Growers Association as well. So what are some of the challenges that I face? Understanding both business and personal strengths and trying to achieve a good work-life balance is a real challenge for me. Succession planning in a small company, and the future for me very much is series wines and moving to creating a brand rather than just something that is a way to suck money down. and then also resilience, and that's about having good staff and good people around me. Got to manage the family dynamic. Obviously, a lot of you deal with that as well, but it's certainly an issue for me as well. And as I said there, Grape Vision, as I think it's believed potentially because it's so service-orientated, I think it's got a finite life, and we're going to be working with evolving that to series. So in summary, I've taken a slightly different path to ending up on this lectern compared to a lot of my contemporaries who you heard from tonight. I think the things that I do and try and do them really, really well is what helps set me apart and is my point of difference. Thanks very much for your time. Just while we're running the questions, if you could perhaps put the video up and just put the words down, so that'd be great. Just a bit of a video of what we do and where we are for you to, as a background for asking questions.
Thank you very much, James. So, ladies and gentlemen, the floor's open. Let's have some questions. Then there, I'll go this way.
Yeah, well done, James. Grant Jackson here, part of the Kellogg Rural Leadership Program as well. Just interested to know how a grape farmer benchmarks their business. What sort of KPIs do you benchmark, and where do you get some source data for that?
So there's a number of different ways. The first thing is the Deloitte survey, where the whole industry voluntarily contributes data anonymised to Deloitte. They strip out any information, make sure it's cost competitive, and then look at different tiers as well. The other thing that we do within the industry is we actually run an industry benchmarking in partnership with both MPI and what used to be Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, a guy called Nick Dalgetty. And then for Central Otago, we see ourselves perhaps fairly or unfairly as a little bit different from everything else. And we're running and creating our own benchmarking. And that looks at all the normal dimensions, COGS. It looks at debt to equity ratios, return on investment, return on EBITDA as well. So all of those types of things as well. It's a tough industry. Not a lot of people make money in the wine industry. A lot of get them into the industry for the wrong reason, and you either have to be very small or achieve scale. And we want to try and achieve scale with what we're doing with series at the moment.
Yeah, good evening, James. Tim Vandermolen, also with the Kellogg course. Nice shirt.
Thanks. Thanks for the check, or is that the BNZ stripe you've got going on there?
No, not BNZ. That's anyway, look, quick question. Your business is hugely exposed to a number of external factors, obviously reliant on RSE, your marketing externally, for example. Given your international experience as well, what factors do you think might potentially disrupt your business, and how do you mitigate that?
That's a huge question to answer in a couple of seconds. The answer is, it starts at the large level with the geopolitical risk, the spectre of Trump coming towards us at the moment, and the uncertainty in the markets. I export overseas. I'm exposed from a financial exchange perspective. I've got my own little FX policy as well, and we work very hard with Mount Difficulty about having an integrated policy with that. For me, it's about creating a resilient business and about having multiple strings to my bow, so that if one thing doesn't go particularly well in a particular year, I'm able to drag on and deal with other things. And a good example of that is the move from Grape Vision, which is very client service orientated. I'm very exposed to the whims of clients and what they decide to do and how they decide to do things. And that's why we're really focusing on series, which can be where we can be masters of our own destiny. We can use and leverage the experience that we've got and take that to the next level, and be able to create something that's a legacy. I don't know whether my children are actually going to follow my footsteps. I hope they do. A 10-year-old and an 8-year-old. I'm not going to certainly force them along the farming pathway. That's very much what my dad did. He didn't push me in a particular direction. I think the lifestyle and what you're able to achieve with that is enticing in itself, and I hope they come back at some stage in the future with something that I've built that they can actually do. And you'll see them in the video here as well.
Hi, Erin Jamison, not from Kellogg.
Hooray!
You mentioned sustainability a couple of times. I'm just interested, what actually are you doing to achieve that sustainability in your business?
So at a number of different levels. I'll start at the industry level. So I'm on New Zealand Wine Growers as a director. I'm the deputy chair of the Sustainability Committee. We have a program in New Zealand Wine Growers called Sustainable Wine Growing New Zealand. 96% of the industry is accredited with it. I'm currently helping lead a continuous improvement process. We're currently benchmarked ourselves against an international standard, which is a relatively low benchmark, and looking at how we can lift the whole industry. So that's sort of a leadership role that I play with sustainability. At an individual level, I'll give you an example on my own vineyard. We deal with quite a lot of vigour on the inlet vineyard, which my wife and I own. And the challenge that we have there is balancing that vigour. You don't want to actually produce a huge amount of grapes to drive quality. So what we're doing is we're actually going organic. Organics in a vineyard context is actually quite difficult because you've got two key things that hold it back. Number one is weeds and weed control, and hence the undervine mow with what we're doing. And the second thing is nitrogen. So I work with Derek Moot again to help plant lucerne in the interrow with what we're doing at the moment, and using that lucerne as it releases through nodulation back into the soil to provide a source of nitrogen. So although we're not certified organic, and I'm not biodynamic, we don't follow any of those sort of processes, what we are doing is trying to find a way of doing things to suit our farming system that actually works in concert and partnership with our local environment.
Andy.
Andy McFarlane, James. Just a question about, some people would say the wine industry is fragmented, but we have a very strong international brand now. Do you believe you need to differentiate yourself from other wine growers, or can you leverage off the New Zealand brand?
I'll use a word that the General Manager of the Central Otago Wine Growers Association hates. It's called cooperation. So you compete, but you cooperate. One of the things that we've been most proud of in Central Otago is a thing called Central Otago Pinot Noir Limited. It's an organisation, a body that was created, which I now lead, where we cooperate to help promote Central Otago. You'll heard of New Zealand wine. When you go overseas, you'll hear of Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc, and then the next thing that people talk about is Central Otago Pinot Noir. And that's because we've cooperated as a region. We see the value of having the greater good, of understanding that if we can work together to sell the message, we can actually get greater cut-through and greater penetration. And that goes to a certain level, which is the cooperation, and then we compete. And to be able to compete effectively, you need to have very clear brand differentiation. That's what we're doing at the moment. I'm going through a rebranding process with a branding expert based in Wellington. There's 750 brands in New Zealand. 5% of the growing area of New Zealand is in Central Otago, and we've got 120 of the brands. So it's a very crowded and very fragmented market space. We all work together exceedingly well, but we have to compete. And to be able to compete effectively, you need to be able to differentiate yourself extremely clearly. Have a very good story, have multiple layers to that story, have very clear branding, and be able to talk the walk. And that's one of the reasons I come up here and wear these shirts. It's memorable. You know, I have to be able to speak in front of people like this. I have to be able to communicate to people in different languages. I work business and internationally in business with that. And being able to do that and be able to sell yourself and be able to sell your story is absolutely vital in the wine industry. To be able to paddock to plate in agricultural parlance or in grape to glass in wine parlance is absolutely vital. And be able to take that from the raw material these days to the finished material in markets in the wine industry is absolutely vital.
James. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for James Dicey.
Thank you.
Congratulations, mate. Put my thing back down, please. Could you produce a wine that makes you grow? Right. These South Africans. Right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we move on to our next contestant, but before we do so, we'd like to obviously watch our next, one of our gold sponsors' videos. Of course, Fern Farms. They've been fantastic supporters of the agri sector, okay, and they've been enormous supporters of the South Island Farmer of the Year. So I'd like you to please pay attention and watch the Fern Farms sponsor video. Thank you.
I don't know, do I want potatoes? if I may.
When you love food, you make it well. And when it's this well made by nature, you take care of it and where it comes from. Sharing only the best with the ones that matter the most. This is what we're made of.
Ladies and gentlemen, to Rob Hewitt, Chairman of Fern Farms, and also his people, we thank you very much for your support. So Rob's just going to come up and address us. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave. It makes me very proud to see that thing there. At heart, I might dress like a banker tonight. I haven't got my check shirt on, unfortunately, and I certainly don't have a paisley, although I do have one of those in my wardrobe at home. I'm really looking forward to getting the moleskins on when I get back, because at heart, I'm a Fern Farms farmer, like a fair chunk of you in the room today. What's central to us and what you saw there, I'm really proud about that, because central to everything that we do is consumer. And you've talked about it tonight, I've heard it, and I'm sure we're going to hear it from our next presenters. Without them, we aren't anything. We certainly can't maximise the value of what you produce on farm, so we have to pay attention to what they want and then leverage that opportunity into what we do inside the farm gate every day. We can't afford to have an off day, because our customers and our consumers around the world won't forgive you for it. So delivery of excellence every time is important, and that's why we're here at South Island Farmer of the Year, because what we see with the presenters here is delivery of excellence. So I congratulate the finalists. We look forward to seeing the last presentation tonight. I know you've come a long way. And certainly our heart goes out to what you guys have had to deal with up there. And the other three as well, congratulations. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you again to Fern Farms for their ongoing sponsorship and support of competitions like this. Very important. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to now welcome Simon Lee and Misha Lee to the stage. They're from Mendip Hills in North Canterbury. And as you've heard and as you know, they've had a bit of a trial getting down here, but I know they're jolly proud to be here to stand up in front of their fellow farming friends and have a go at winning the prize. So Simon and Misha, welcome to the stage. Thank you very much.
Before I start the clock, I'd like to just go back to what Dave was saying before about the credentials of being a stock agent. So when I was about 20 years old as a shepherd in the Murray Basin, Dave would have been, I don't know, probably my age now, and there was two things he missed out as credentials to be a stock agent. He used to smoke a pack of Rothmans a day and have a bike on the back of his car on a stand, and the two things together I could not work out how they worked. And he always used to toot as he left the sheep yards and all the lambs would pile against the fence. Well, I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight. I'm Simon Lee. I manage Mendip Hills Station in Cheviot. I'd like to acknowledge my wife, Misha, and my staff, which are all on this table here. The bride and black who owns Mendip Hills Station could not be here tonight. He was over in Melbourne for the birth of a grandchild. but we've got David Black here, who is the son. So I would like to thank Lincoln, and I would like to thank the judges that in the first round, second round, for the opportunity to be here. If I didn't get here, I tell you what, I learned a lot from the people that I networked with. I met some great people, and I hope to bump into them again. I was proud to be, to be able to do this, and I found it was a way for me to upskill my staff, because they're all involved. They met the judges on both rounds, or one time all of them did, and partly and on the job. But I'd like to talk to my PowerPoint, and I might even just point out a few of the shots and where they are, because it's quite relevant to the property. So, Mendip Hills Station is 6,000 hectares. I've been managing Mendip Hills for 10 years. Previously to that, I'm just going to go back a step, just so you knew where I come from. I came from the Wairarapa. I went to Telford and did a dip ag. I shepherded in the South Island for about 4 years. I got my first manager's job at Pahau Downs in Culverton when I was 24, and then I got the manager's job at Mendip Hills when I was 28. I decided to go for the job because it was a goal. It was to be at a property like this, and it was such a pleasure to be able to be offered the job and to be able to work for the Black family and how they treat us as a family and all the staff, and it was great. So we're a 6,000 hectare hill country property running 34,000 stock units. Now that's varied in the last 2 years because of the drought, but we're building our way back up there now. In support of that, we've got a 180 hectare irrigated block in Spotswood, which is 12 kilometres away from us. So that's just going into converting into centre pivot irrigation at the moment. So we're just in the last stage at the moment. It's on hold at the moment for 2 weeks because of the earthquakes. We've got another 152 hectare irrigated block, which is all deer fenced in Ashburton down at Long Beach. I'll talk about these later and how they integrate into our business. We've got 9 full-time staff. Majority of them live on the station around the hub of the buildings. We're an 850 to 1,000, 1,100 mil. This is average rainfall over the last sort of 50 years. We're 180 metres at the shed at the station buildings, 1,050. So that shot there is the top of Mount Stewart, and we are that's where we run our cows in the winter, and that's looking to the Kaikoura Peninsula there, where the mountain of Mount Fife drops off. So to give you an idea of the sort of some of the country, that's the highest point there. So the people make our business. If I don't have the right people under me, I'm nothing really, because my job is to manage these people, give them the tools and the toolbox to do it, and get the job done. Because if haven't got the right people in the right place and the right responsibilities, I can't do my job, and then the whole thing just falls down. So the staff, I'm just going to run through them because they are, I'll keep emphasising this, they're an important part of our business, and the way that they progress in their own careers within the business, or even more so to go on later on in their life. So I'll start with Paul, who's our block manager at Spotswood, which we've owned for 3 years. He's been there from day one. Now, it's quite ironic. Paul worked for me probably 10 years, 15 years earlier. So he was a good man for the job. I knew him. I knew what his capabilities were. He was rounded, skilled. He was the man for the job. Put him in there when we brought it. I've got a stock manager, Hamish. Hamish started with me when he was a shepherd. He was 18. He left Boys High, came to me, and I could see a lot of potential in him. And there was an opening for him to be head shepherd, and then he's grown into a job as my stock manager, and I lean on him as much as I can, but then he can lean on me and pump me for information, so it's a real good combination. Hamish he's only 21 now, but he's growing into the job. We've got our tractor driver, Warren, who's been with me for the longest, about 7 years now. He's general tractor work, machinery, workshop, guru, good all-round guy, he sort of helps everyone out. We've got a fencer, which is Bill. He's a fencer general. He's got a lot of work ahead of him with us behind him in the next couple of years. We've got a senior shepherd, Vicky. So we've always had a female in and out of the team, but the girls. My wife worked for me as a shepherd years ago, and I reckon women are got a very good sort of touch with livestock, probably. And then we've got our shepherds, George and Curtis. So they're usually the younger ones coming up, and it's great to see them grow into their roles and where they go on to in the future. So career and advancement and training is huge to us. Like, we go to as many field days as we can. We are discussion group active, so beef and lamb. Also shearing courses, done a lot of them on the station. Our first aid courses, anything we can get around them, we do it. So the people are the business, because they're getting the business done. The farm R&D, research and development, is a big thing that I enjoy, because that's my upskilling, so we've done a lot of it. Deer industry focus farm we did for 5 years with Dins. They said, well, do you want to do it? And I said, yep, that's me. So the biggest things I got out of that were yonis, learning about yonis. We had a yonis problem, tackled it. We had culling rates of 50% down to 5% now, and we've bet it. We've still got it, but we've bet it, and it's commercially better for us. Genetics, we went through all the different genetics of BVs, sires, terminals, you name it, and we've probably not done a full circle, but we've really refined what genetics we're putting into our deer herd. And a lot of novel forages. We were growing fodder beet 9 years ago when we were first into the focus farm, and haven't stopped since. We've done Massey University lepto trials, did that for 3 years, lepto in lambs, cattle, so just injecting them with lepto, just testing, and it was we got a lot of information out of it as well. We're now in a 6-year program with beef and lamb genetics, so in the beef genetics side. So what we're doing is we've AIing out of our 1,250 cow herd, we're AIing 520, and we're in our 3rd season this year of AI. We've AI'd to, by the time the program's finished, we're AI'd to probably about 50 different sires, and that is, we're doing the Hereford, low birth weight Angus, and some Charolais. And this is all to do with what EBVs tell us and what information we can get on as a commercial scale, but we're doing it like a stud breeder. We're scanning, carcass scanning every calf. We're weighing all the time. We're DNA, everything possibly that we can put into these we're doing. So the end product is to grow a carcass, and all those animals are getting killed through Fern Farms on the EQ grading system, and also the maternal side of it going into the herd on how we develop the type of cattle as a female for our country, but not only our country, but for the wider New Zealand cow herd. So that cow the cow that I thought was right for Mendip Hills Station as a maternal producing X beef might have been a 480 kilo cow, but really we could probably go with a 520 kilo cow producing a better steer with better growth rates. And we've learnt so much in a short time about genetics. There's genetics within breed that are just carving up. So it's really, really exciting, and you can't wait to kill the first lot of steers is the main thing. And along with the annual regrassing and just trying different things, we crop 300 hectares of hill country flat a year at Mendip and Spotswood. Revenue streams, I hope you can see that. So sheep meat, when I say sheep meat, I mean I'm going to divide that. I'm going to go mutton. Being mutton is our annual draft ewes, and lamb is our main income at Mendip Hills. Lamb, we're striving. We've gone through a big breed change. We've gone from a Corriedale 10 years ago to now to a sort of a three-quarter Romney, full Romney. We ran 11,400 ewes. I've pulled that back to 10,300 Romneys now. We came from 96% lambing in 2006 to this year. It was our record lambing of tailing. We've still got lambs to tail, which we can't access at the moment, but we've done 15,500, which will give us about 152% to the ram and climbing. We're hogget mating now, so there'll be another 1,000 lambs there. But we're striving to finish our lambs and striving to get them into what what Silver Fern Farms want, what they're telling us they want, and what their consumers want. So we are pilot within a group of us in Cheviot. We're pilot farmers for lamb EQ, which is a new thing coming up, and that will be exciting to see how our lambs grade in the lamb EQ. So we really pride ourselves in our sheep, and we're trying to just build them better and better. But for our sort of country, that mid 150s to 150 is about where we need to be because of the native grasses and etc. Wool is a big thing for us. We invested heavily in wools in New Zealand years ago, and wool is a product, and it is 9% of our gross farm income. And we still class wool, believe it or not. We come from the Corridor days where we're classing every fleece. We're still classing wool. We class all our hoggets, getting our hoggets back into a main line. So we're putting good wool. If we're going to produce a product and we're going to grow wool, why not grow good wool? And that's my theory anyway. The beef, well, there's 1,250 breeding cows. Pre-drought, which we're building back up now, we wintered about 2,700, 2,800 cattle on Mendip Hills. The beef cow herd is mainly a Hereford, and we've now started crossbreeding Hereford Angus and Angus. Never used any terminal size like a Charolais until this beef progeny test came along. Cows are calved among ewes, under ewes, wintered on native hill country, and are fed no supplements. Most of our stock in the previous to the last 2 years of drought are all grass wintering, except for young cattle and young sheep. Venison, we run 1,400 hinds on the hill. So, like previous contestants were saying, we run them in higher altitude country where grass growth suits their lactational curve. We run a terminal herd, a maternal herd. They come in twice a year, one for TB testing, one for weaning. We use a helicopter to put them in. So they're really low cost. They're about 15% of our gross farm income. They really spread our workload. So we've done all our mating, and then we're into weaning. When we've done all our set stocking, we're into the deer set stocking. So it's a real good flow on. Manuka honey is something we've got into in the last 2 years. We haven't invested in capital on Manuka honey, but we've got plenty of the product that makes Manuka honey. We've done a full circle. We used to burn, spray, crush it, try and do everything to it to kill the Manuka, and now we are preserving it on our tougher, clayer country that does not grow good grass and produce good stock. And we invest with 2 beekeepers. We're running 650 hives this season, and it's a good growing business, and we are just really interested in what they're doing. I've got my own bee suit now. I was never interested in it before until now. Forestry, we've got 140 hectares of forestry. Some are 26 years old, some are 4 years old. That's just an ongoing thing. It's something the Black family have always had a big interest in, is forestry. And also, I just mentioned dairy heifer grazing because we do a bit of that at Spotswood as well. Just talking about a bit of diversification. So this is just a bit what I was just talking about before, about the sheep. I'm going to go through this. 3rd killed off mum, 3rd finished on farm, 3rd sold store to the other farm to finish. So we're financially independent with the farm in Ashburton, so a value is agreed, and away they go. With the Spotswood and Mendip block, they are worked together, so it's a lot easier for me to keep control on fuel, plant, staff, etc. That's just a bit of a slide about the beef and about the EQ. We do Hereford dairy bull sires as well as another revenue stream. So we keep a lot of bulls in Tyre. They go straight to Spotswood so they don't cause any havoc at home. They are now starting to leave the farm now at 400 kilos to the dairy industry. And then we're just talking, this is what I just went on about before, the venison and the velvet. Velvet is a big part of our operation as far as, it's only the sire stags, but it is actually quite a good revenue stream at the moment for a product on them. And then that was just a bit about the Manuka honey. So if you see in the background there where the words are, you can see the Manuka country that we have. So hives are all through this country here. And that's a bit about the forestry operations that I explained about before. Irrigation. So irrigation, this is what we're investing in at the moment. Future schemes, we've got a scheme that we would like to get going, which is irrigation at Mendip Hills, which would be damming the Leader River, and being able to put a scheme into the Leader Valley and being able to water 1,200 hectares of neighbouring land and 200 hectares of our own. It's an ongoing thing. It'll take a long time, but it's still another goal. This is looking towards the future. So this photo here was taken about 2 weeks ago when we were tailing. So this is one of the shepherds sitting on a ridge at about 5:30 in the morning, taking lambs down the hill for docking. So I thought that one was a good one for looking to the future. So the future of Mendip Hills is, well, I want to be there for a lot longer, and I want to leave it there in better condition than I took it over for another manager that takes over from me. And I would like to keep going with R&D, keep good staff, because as I say, they're the key, and push them on to better future or better jobs, or even if they're going to family farms and being able to take things that we've done or things they've learnt at the discussion groups to their home properties. So the other thing I'd like to say is the NZA is being part of a community. So we're really community active. So we're presidents of the Dog Trial Club. We run the straight hunt. I've been the president of the AMP show, the chairman of the Beef and Lamb for North Canterbury, part of a discussion group, part of a lamb, beef, venison supply group. And I think what you put into the community, you'll get back. And I think we've probably learned a lot about that in the last sort of 3 or 4 days with what North Canterbury's been through, and how a community like that can pull together and sort of, drop tools, pull together, water, food, supplies, cleaning and getting everything done. And it'll be ongoing for all those farmers up there. And we're certainly not the worst by far. Thank you.
Back up here. Get back over there. So, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it from a young guy who really is an achiever in the agri sector. So let's hit him with some questions. We've got time for 2 or 3 questions as the evening goes on. Nicola, where are you? There's a arm gone up over there. Can you please see that chap over there? Thank you.
Yeah, very good presentation. Thanks, Simon. And I apologise if this is a difficult question, but I'd just be interested to hear a little bit about how things are after the earthquake.
I suppose from our perspective, you're talking about the community and how everything's pulled together, but as our farm and our neighbours who we're keeping in close contact with and how they're all pulling together, there's loss of land, there's loss of buildings, water schemes. Water's probably going to be the biggest issue for the farmers in the Amuri, Hamner, Waiau, Cheviot and Kaikoura North, really. Stock water system, council systems that are being severed, and there could be a break, every 50 metres because there's been a rupture in the ground. We've got scars in the ground that have pulled a water scheme, a 75mm pipe that were put in 6 years ago, a metre deep, and it's pulled it out of the ground, so it's sitting on top of the ground, so it's doing a wave effect. So it's going to be a long process to get all the water systems going, power restored. The roading in North Canterbury, we went for a drive today because we haven't been off farm much, and Hamish and I went out the Fernhurst Road across the Conway, and out towards Hunterlees there just to have a look, and I could not believe the roads and how the bridges had all sunk and the cracks in the road. You can't even, some of them would be 3-4 metres deep. So they're getting the infrastructure main trunk line going for anything, stock. We're all weaning lambs in another month, so it's going to be a big job. And I think like if we can help out with water, etc., with our neighbours and council workers and bits and pieces, they're trying hard. It's going to be, So if you know anyone with water tankers or trucks or trailers or something like that, it would be a good thing, because a lot of these things are going to take a long time. Like our council water's not going to be going for a while, but hopefully we've got a backup pump in the Leader River. But the Leader River's had 2 landslides upstream at Woodchester Station, which is 6 k's upriver from us. They were stuck in there. So these rivers are damming now. So there's 2 lakes, and our water flow is minimal, and we don't want to be down in the river when this happens. On our north side, the Conway is dammed as well. We've got some footage of that, and that's damming. So I don't know what the Civil Defence are working on that, because they don't want it to go, because it's going to take out the Conway, bridges and etc. like that. But yeah, I think community thing has been huge, with helping us out with different things, and a lot of offers. You're always on the phone, but you just got to try and get your head around it. And our biggest thing is water, and we need it pretty quick. And we're really lucky that it's been drizzly and overcast, because if it was that North Canterbury 32-degree heat, we'd be pretty buggered.
Might have to call it a day there for Simon. No doubt you can all catch up with Simon and Misha and the Mendip Hills team. So, ladies and gentlemen, just one further observation is that smoking stunts your growth. And if I had to wear their bee suit, I'd look like a Teletubby. So, Simon, congratulations, mate. Well done. All the very best. Simon and Misha. Ladies and gentlemen, the order of the evening now is such, we're a little bit behind time, but I reckon that's okay. We want you now to fill out your forms on your tables and vote for the best presentation. These will be collected by the foundation people. And Nicola is over here. She's walking around with boxes. I'm now going to ask, as our judges adjourn to make their final decisions, our chairman again, Mr. Ben Todhunter, is going to come up to the stage and introduce the speaker for this evening. So if Ben, you could make your way up, that would be appreciated. Thank you very much, but please make sure you fill out your forms, okay, and vote correctly. Thank you.
Right, so I hope you've got that decision made. It's all locked away. It's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Amanda Lynn. Amanda calls herself an economic anthropologist, and I think that's a great description of what she does. So economics, we used to think was a rational science, but people aren't always rational. And a study of anthropology puts a lot of insights into what drives people to make economic decisions. So I think it's a really good combination. And I first met Amanda at the Clearwater Mussels Winners Field Day last year. And one of the things after that field day was that she made the farmers feel really positive about themselves after the presentation. It was lovely to hear someone talk with warmth and passion about farming, because we often hear it in the other side in the audience. So I asked Amanda to come down, and the other interesting thing that she was doing at the time was writing a doctorate, and as part of that doctorate, she has interviewed, as I said before, 3 winners of the South Island Farm of the Year. Now, I was talking to Doug Avery one day about this, and Doug and both John, I think, really enjoyed their time. John Young really enjoyed their time with Amanda. But Doug was saying, he said, Amanda came up to him and said, you know, Doug, that I was checking you out for 2 years before I wanted to interview you. So I think she's done her research, and the insights and stuff are quite amazing. And I was sitting beside her as James gave his presentation, and one of the things that James talks about is striving for perfection. And that's one of the traits if you read her doctorate, and I encourage all you Kelloggers to go and read her doctorate. Striving for perfection is one of the things in there, and James, one of our finalists tonight, encapsulated that. So is it with great pleasure to ask Dr. Amanda Lynn to come up and address the audience, please. We're just working out how to get a short townie visible behind the platform. Thank you so much for asking the short townie to come along and talk to you today. It's been a really great pleasure for me to work with the rural entrepreneurs that I've worked with. And actually, I didn't intend to work with rural entrepreneurs. My focus was on innovative entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs come in 2 basic forms, innovative and replicative. And far less are innovative. Far less have a focus on change and development. In each society in the world, we look at around 9% of the population being entrepreneurs. If we then break that down into innovatives, we're probably about 3%. And the reason why that percentage is so small is because it's really hard work. It's difficult to innovate. It's far easier to put our heads in the sand and ignore the passage of time and the change that occurs around us. But to be able to engage, as your South Island Farmers of the Year have done, both your finalists and your previous winners, takes a huge amount of energy, a lot of optimism, and a mammoth amount of learning. The 3 entrepreneurs that I worked with that won the South Island Farmer of the Year won in the successive years of my PhD. First it was won by Doug, and then it was won by Peter, and then it was won by John. Working with these people was an intensive experience. This is not about a researcher turning up with a Likert scale and a bunch of questions and spending half an hour with you. I studied them before I met them. They didn't know I was there, and I was already in the room. I then worked alongside them for 2 years and continued to study them from a distance when I moved away. I didn't just study what they said, I critically analysed everything they said to everybody that I could hear. Everything they wrote, everything they did, the financials in their businesses. I went out on their boats, I went out on their farms, I went out on their vineyards. It was a pervasive experience. What I want to share with you today are the key things that I learned. I can't go through a whole doctoral thesis in a short period of time. So what I'm going to do is pick out the things that I think are valuable for you to reflect on in order to strengthen you as you go about this incredibly difficult but rewarding endeavour of innovating and being rural entrepreneurs. I don't even know if you think about yourselves as entrepreneurs, but actually that's what you are. I've called this talk Bringing Value into Being. And there's 4 things that when I walk away, I want you to hold on to. One of them is that there is actually a process or a rhythm to innovative entrepreneurship. And wherever there is a process or a rhythm, in anthropology we might call it ritualistic living, wherever that exists, the traits are so endemic to the individual that they cannot be relinquished. And the times that you say to yourself, am I mad? No, you're not. You simply are who you are, and you might as well not fight it. You might as well love it and live it because that is who you are, and that is just fine. The second is that this is about far more than the business. It's about the development of who you are as a person across the course of your life. And that's one of the reasons why you can't let it go, and why the dark side of this process is that if you attempt to let it go, you will face heartbreak. You may even face the breakage of your mind. So you might as well participate, and you might as well enjoy it. The ultimate reward is a self that knows he or she is being valuable. Did you think I was going to say money? No, you all know I'm not going to say money. Money can be got a myriad of ways. I looked at a beautiful picture today of $250 million sitting in the basement of a Mexican drug lord. He had no intention to be valuable, none at all, but he had a lot of money. For the innovative entrepreneurs, without exception, and all up there were 317 in this particular study, all New Zealanders, the ultimate reward is to be valuable, and I'll explain to you what that means. And finally, it's really important to recognise that you are not mechanisms in the New Zealand economy. You are not mechanisms in the New Zealand environment, nor are you mechanisms in the New Zealand society. You are people who have the right to express your humanness in the way that it is meaningful to you. And that is a really important finding of this study, and a really important point that I want to get across to you. So let's talk about the process for a little bit. And you should smile a bit at the second line where you see that perfectionistic striving. What happens with each of the individuals I studied is that from very early in their lives, usually about 4 years of age, they begin to show a desire to be valuable. Doug would take a little cart and put bottles in it, and the big milk containers to take down to the gate for his father. Peter would follow his father around and do things like sorting out the bad dates from the good dates at the back of the little supermarket, Foursquare, that they had. And John, who lost his father early in his life, would strive to be valuable to his mother by making sure that all the little jobs that his father did were done by him. As soon as possible, they all moved out into the earning world, and they did that for two reasons. One was to be valuable by earning, and the other one was to be valuable by doing something for someone else. In order to be valuable, you can't just talk it. You have to walk it. Early in their lives, they find a way to be valuable is this mechanism, this trait called perfectionistic striving. Perfectionistic striving is not what a psychologist would call global perfectionism. The first time I met Doug, he was wearing what looked like a pink tutu. It was actually a pair of Canterbury colours shorts that were so old that they'd gone up at the end and gone pink. I wouldn't have looked at Doug and said, this is a perfectionist. But as soon as he started to talk to me, he started to tell me through his words how important perfectionistic striving was to him in relation to the task of being valuable. Marcus, one of the other entrepreneurs, said to me, I don't have to have everything in my world right. In fact, I prefer things that are not right. I like my tackle box to be good and dirty, and I like people around me to be not perfect. I like their flaws. Perfectionistic striving is in relation to the endeavour of being valuable, and that is expressed through their entrepreneurship. Perfectionistic striving is a really wonderful trait until it hits the dark side. What happens when things go wrong? Doug talked to us about that in terms of his work with Resilient Farmer. All of the entrepreneurs in the study have faced times when they just couldn't get it right enough and they turned on themselves. What creates the resilience and the really important trait that follows up behind this is this trait called pragmatism. Pragmatism is not being practical. Being practical is just being able to do stuff. Pragmatism has two components. A, it's practical, but B, openness to new ideas. Because actually, if you're going to change anything in the world, like Einstein said, you just can't do the same thing over and over, or you're just going to get the same result. So pragmatism is also an openness to new ideas, development, possibly the ultimate reward, meaningful reward, things that actually show them that they're being valuable, and in the moment that they achieve those meaningful rewards, they get that moment of actually feeling validated. I am valuable in the world, I am valuable to others. Unfortunately, because of perfectionistic striving, that's temporary. So when the question is asked, are these people never happy? Do they have to go straight on to the next problem? The answer is an emphatic yes. And they won't be happy unless you let them. So just talking a little bit about these traits, and I'm not going to go through all of them vigorously, there's just a couple in each that I think are really important. Perfectionistic striving is about being accountable, analytical, assiduous. It's about opportunity, and it's about originative thinking. And the two I'm going to pick out are sitting side by side there on the same line, originative and assiduous. We often talk about people being creative, and I asked all of these people well into the research, do you consider yourself to be a creative person? And they said, hell no. No, that's arty-farty stuff. Peter probably came the closest. He said, I consider sculpting the land to be creative. Creativity is not the core skill of the entrepreneur, not the innovative one. The core skill is originative thinking, to have ideas or to apply things in a way that is totally original to solve the specific problem you're looking at. It's a really key difference. When you look out in the world and you pursue information, what you're looking for is ideas that are original or your own original way to apply ideas and technologies that already exist in the world. That's a really key thing with all of these people. Assiduous is also really important. To be assiduous is to just not let it go. That's a dog with a bone. John gave me a call one morning and he said, I'm going out to Admiralty Bay. Do you want to come? We'll only be a couple of hours and we'll stop by at Gulta on the way back and we'll have lunch with Lynn. Be at the dock at 6 o'clock. So at 6 o'clock, I was at the dock at Te Mahia and we got on the boat and 9 hours later we returned. On the way out to Admiralty, we checked every single mussel farm. I'll only be a minute. I have to go in here. I'll only be a minute. We're going to be a bit late, but it's okay. He had to do it because that's what they are. They're absolutely like a dog with a bone. They've got to stay on the problem until it's fixed. And when we got out to Admiralty, the mussel farm that was out there, as we were pulling up, John was telling me all about how he nearly drowned out there when he was in his 20s. And as he was talking, I turned around and I said to him, what's wrong with that mussel line? And John, without a single pause, said, oh my good godfather, and suddenly swung the boat towards this line. And what had happened was the mussel float had filled up with water and was dragging the mussel line down. We'd salvaged a mussel float, it was a Sanford float, from the middle of the water earlier in the day, because, we couldn't just leave it there. We have to go and pick it up. It's a navigation risk. So we went and got this mussel float that we'd salvaged, and we spent about half an hour nearly tipping the boat upside down, putting in the new float, so that the mussels wouldn't go to the bottom before they could get the boat, the repair boat, the muscat, out. I could have sat there and said, oh, look, I'm really hungry. It's tea time. Lynn's expecting us. You can't do that. The problem's there. It has to be solved, and they need to stay with it until it's solved. And the only way they can walk away from it is if there's a park moment, a moment where they say there's just one critical thing that has to arrive, and then I can get going again. And it will give them enough of a panacea, enough of a bit of a Panadol to keep that desire to strive at bay. That's the muscat I'm there with John and with Max and Ian. And John's got both fingers out here telling them all about it. This is the boat that does the repairs on the mussel farms. So that second trait, pragmatism, really important. This is a lifesaver. This is actually a lifesaver. And that's why I wanted to talk to you about this, because Suicide rates among farmers are extremely high, as you know. But importantly, that's the tip of a large iceberg. Pragmatism, in many respects, is a solution, in that if you can act, then you can actually reduce the anxiety that comes with perfectionistic striving. You can act in such a way that you actually make yourself feel as though there's another tomorrow. And Doug was a really good example of this in terms of his resilient farmer work, where he said in 1996 his business, it actually didn't make a loss. It was break even for 1 year, and that was enough to nearly tip Doug right off the planet. And he said what he needed to do was just get out there. Get out there and talk to people. He didn't want to. Get out there and talk to people. Get out there and do stuff. And the only time that he felt worthy was when he was doing something. I love this quote here from Martin Luther King. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. Do whatever you have to keep moving forward. That's actually the key. And psychologists have a break moment where we say, in the moment that you think life is no longer worth living, live it anyway. What have you got to lose? Literally, just keep going and find your way back to the surface by doing things that make you feel micro, macro, quantum valuable. Within this framework of pragmatism, I think the one that surprised people the most was the capacity to undertake research. These people pursue knowledge wherever they can find it. They profess to not like reading, but they read huge volumes of information, both via the internet as well as through books. They read about other people, they read biographies, they read about the sciences outside of their own science. They do steadfast research. They go to other people and ask other people what they would do and what are their ideas. And they start to really blossom when they collaborate and get together with other people who have different knowledge sets. Again, with Doug, you can see that in terms of his work with Lincoln University and the work on the Lucerne. In terms of John, he's got people like Rob Davidson, who works alongside, who's a marine scientist. And in terms of Peter, he's got both the internal team as well as the research projects that they run through organisations like the Ministry for Business Innovation and Employment and New Zealand Trade and Enterprise. They have a mammoth capacity to take in information and to analyse it. They're highly analytical individuals. Every single one of them told me that they weren't terribly smart. They're actually really smart. It's all relative. Smart's relative. Development is really important. Development is a day-by-day, week-by-week, year-by-year reward. In the moment that something is actually physically built, the moment of reward is felt. Just before that moment hits, they've identified the next target and they're moving on. So they never stop and say, oh, I did really well with that. I mean, look at that beautiful building. At the time that I spoke to Peter, he was sitting down with me one day and he was telling me all about, the development of yearlings up to that point. And he was telling me all about a subdivision that he wasn't happy with and he was just selling. And then suddenly he whipped out a piece of paper and he drew an absolutely pinpoint perfect picture, just on a piece of paper, of the massive expansion to yearlings that is now underway. He was happy with where yearlings had got to, but not happy enough. There was a next stage, a next development, and it was already in the wings. He was validated and yet still pursuing the next stage. The area that I wanted to talk to you about here is isolation. Without exception, the individuals that I dealt with who were active in innovative entrepreneurship took massive doses of time out. In the moment where Doug disappears to the back of the farm, John disappears on a muscle boat, and Peter disappears on a tractor, leave them alone. They're not only thinking about the next stage of development, but they're actually integrating development of the self. They're actually becoming a new person than they were previously. And I just don't think there's a better example than the monarch butterflies there. They go from caterpillar to cocoon to butterfly, and before they leave the planet, they lay down the eggs of their legacy. This is a pure developmental cycle. And when we look at an entrepreneur, and when you look at yourselves across time, and you say, as Peter said to me, I look across the course of my life, and I don't mind telling you, Amanda, that once upon a time I was a bit of a bastard. That's his view of the self he left behind. That is not the self he is today. So one of the things we have got to do as an aspect of recognising development, change and legacy with all of you is that if you happen to dump something at the back of the farm that you shouldn't because it was the way that was done in 1970 and you're not doing that now, bravo, good for you. That's development, that's change, and when you find the perfect person, let me know and I'll spend 2 years studying them and I'll prove that they're perfect. Allow that isolation to happen. If they scutter away suddenly and they just need to be alone, recognise in yourselves when you need to do this that time out is productive and functional, and that when you come back, you might just come back with the most amazing vision that previous to that moment you didn't have. All of these people have had that experience. They've all gone further than they ever thought they would go. The other aspect of this is learning. The volume, I said to you, they look for knowledge, they're active researchers. The integration of learning from a neuropsychological perspective requires time out. Time to think about, to analyse what we've learned, and then to integrate it. If we don't do that, we cannot turn information into knowledge. And it's actually knowledge that's valuable. We've all got lots of information, but it's knowledge that is absolutely king in innovation. At the moment that knowledge settles in, at the point of gnosis, we are able to apply what we know and we develop from it. And that's what these people absolutely love. They need that time to learn and to integrate. Meaningful reward, not about the money. What it is about, there's external and internal rewards. External rewards like awards, when they win an award, validates them that you value them, and that's important to them because actually it's not all about them. What they're looking for is a validation in the external world as well as the internal world. They need to know I've done really well today, but they also need to know that I've done something that you value. You think about how this works in terms of a business. When someone buys your product, they're innately validating you in what you just did. When they buy a lot of your product and they really love your brand, they're really validating you in what you did. These are not internal validators. They act within the self and outside in society, and they need the validation in both areas. If they don't get the validation in both areas, then they suffer. There's a really dark side to this. We live in a hypercritical society. New Zealand is sometimes called the world's most bulliest nation. We seem to believe that we can walk down the street and we can shoot people down about what they wear and what they say and what they did in 1970. We sit on the sidelines and tell expert rugby players everything they did wrong. I have personally never been on a rugby field, and I do it. I know everything Richie McCaw should have done in the last game. I know nothing. But something about the culture in New Zealand makes us think we can do it. Something about the culture makes us look at people from the outside and decide we know their trajectory. When Peter started to capital raise for his expansion, lots of people called me because they knew that there was a tightness there, a relationship there. Oh, he's going bust, yada, yada, yada. Years ahead, he'd planned this. A mammoth effort from a psychological perspective to let go of enough of the business to be able to finance its growth. A really clever model to do it. But we all sat on the outside, well, not all of us, but we sat on the outside and we had a good old judge. Mussel farmers face that as they're going through the process of really looking into their marine science and trying to get it right for their species. Oh, the fisherman who pulls up and drops the beer in the water knows all about it. Actually, we need to stop that because when you're a perfectionistic striver, that burns like hellfire. One of the things that I would really encourage you to do, in which these people over their lives have become better and better at, is to listen to the people who you have faith in, to listen to the people who are experts, and to be careful about their language. Language is really important. There's a difference between saying, oh, you look really nice in that, and, oh, that looks good, but I wouldn't wear it. Right? We know it, don't we? Because actually we hear all of this stuff all of the time. And this kind of stuff, Maya Angelou called it the ultimate evil. Eating people bite by bite until there is so much of them gone that they cannot live as they needed to live. We need to focus on the people who can offer us knowledge and who have the kind of respect for us as human beings that we can actually listen to their words and know they will build us up. They will not tear us down. And even if we've made a mistake, and even if we're heading for a brick wall, they have a moment where they stop us and say, I think you're really cool, and I don't want you to hit this wall. So I'm just going to let you know that there's some other options. There's a really big difference between that and the people who sit there and go, ha ha, heading for the brick wall, thought you knew it all, isn't there? So be really selective about the people that you have in your life, and be really selective about what you choose to hear and what you choose to let in. Because there is a sensitivity. As your presentations have been going through today, people have mentioned perfectionism specifically. All of your presentations have included pragmatic descriptions of the application of new ideas on your farms. You've all described development, both of yourselves and of your land, and of your species. But you've also talked hugely about your people. You've talked about your families, you've talked about your staff, you've talked about clients. In psychology, we call it the difference between the I and the me. And Peter said something really gorgeous when I first met him. He said to me, why is everybody interested in me as an entrepreneur? That's not who I am. Me as an entrepreneur, that's not who I am. I is the developing self who knows the self completely. Absolutely. Criticises itself constantly. These guys, honestly, the things they say about each other, John? Not each other, about themselves, are just ruthless. John will be very careful in any criticism of another person, and then he'll rip himself down like nothing on earth. And I'll sit there and I'll say, I just want you to back up a minute, John, and just think about what you just said. Oh. No, they don't need external criticism. They need external help to develop, but they are constantly on their own case. And part of that being on their own case is looking at the world around them and the effects that they have on others. Are they perfect? No. Again, if you find the perfect person, do let me know, because you found an organism that actually no scientist believes exists. We're off into religion with that one. But what's really important about the me is that everything these people create is a reflection of self-development and a reflection of the ability to express who they are. So their businesses are personal to them, and their families are personal to them, but more than that, their peers, remember that selectiveness, are personal to them. The society, when people get up in arms about their activities and they're being reasonable, they'll listen. When they're being unreasonable, they'll feel hurt. Why do they feel hurt? Because they matter, because it's a reflection on the self. And then the environment is the same. How much pleasure do they get when they get to the stage where they can talk about their sustainability programs? When you hear John talking about mussels as though they're all sitting in the water waiting for him to arrive in the morning because he knows every single one personally. When you've got Peter starting up butterfly gullies because Vi likes butterflies and butterflies are good for the environment, and there's a lot of pressure on bees and butterflies help out with the pollination. They get really into it. Doug, with his sustainability programs on his property, I put these side by side. This is Doug's grandy, as he calls them, and this is the river where they planted the flax so that the runoff is filtered before it goes into the river. This is what it's all about. It stretches that far. The self stretches that far. And in fact, it stretches so far that the ultimate reward to some degree is to be valuable in terms of legacy. Oh, that's gone completely nuts. Just bear with me on that. This legacy is the ultimate reward. When you leave the planet and you've left it in a situation where your family is better off, your local community is better off, you've learned to manage symbiosis with the environment more effectively, and you're actually able to look back on your life and say, I may not be remembered as Peter or John or Doug, but the echoes and the effects of me on this world are going to be positive, not for one generation or two generations, but perhaps 3, 4 and 5 generations. That aspect of legacy is really important to them, and in some respects, that is the ultimate development goal and the ultimate reward. So I've got question time because I haven't heard a ding.
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. You could have heard a pin drop, couldn't you? And I think we've never really heard of a speech like that or a presentation like that in the agriculture sector. So I think before we do ask questions of Dr. Amanda, I think we should owe her and give her a huge applause for taking us outside our comfort zone. So Amanda, thank you. What I like about having the doctor up here is that I'm taller, so... Did you smoke? Okay, so from the floor, we've got a bit of time, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's really important that we, I suppose, seize the moment here with Dr. Amanda and ask some questions that are probably burning in our minds and may feel a little bit uncomfortable about asking them. So I can't see out there at the moment because of the lights, but have you got your microphone there?
Hi, thank you. That was an amazing presentation. I just wanted to ask you for the farmers in the room and outside of here who aren't maybe at that level yet but have the potential to be, how if they've got blocks or things like that where they may have some of the characteristics that you've presented here, what's your advice to them?
If you all think about, and I can actually barely see you because of the light, sorry. If you think about those traits there, I guess my first question is, are any of those meaningful to you? Are you nervous about saying? Or do they seem completely foreign? Yeah? Yeah?
They are probably go for most of us here in this room.
Yeah, good, because that's what I would expect.
Because that's why we're here.
Yep, totally. Excellent, that's excellent. So what would my advice be if aspects of these traits are affecting you now? Is that what your question is? Yep.
So how do you get out of the dark side?
How do you get out of the dark side? What an excellent question. What an excellent question. Psychologists learned a long time ago that there is no trait that doesn't have a dark and a light side. Okay? There's frugal and then there's stingy. There's perfectionistic striving, and then there's global perfectionism and the damaging effects of that, which are damaging across all types of people. So what would my advice be in terms of how to manage this? The pivot to all of this is actually pragmatism. Perfectionism drives you a little bit like the foot on the accelerator does in the car, right? And when it starts up, it feels like a real buzz. I don't know if you're much in the way of drivers, but I'm crazy for speed. So not the kind you snip up your nose or shoot in your arm, the kind that comes with the accelerator. And as you're scaling up, and you're striving towards a perfectionistic goal,
you can get quite a rush and you can get really focused on what you're doing. And we had presentations today that talked about the difficulty of work-life balance. There is no work-life balance for these people. One of the things I would do is say, try to hold on to the thought that you can let that go. You can bring your entire life into focus and make it a part of who you are as a perfectionistic striver. What do I mean by that? I mean that you don't have to think, I need to clock off at 5 and be home by 6 to have dinner and read a story to the children. I'm talking my own life here, I'm not talking yours, because I was an entrepreneur long before I was an academic. And I've got to get this done, I've got to be right, and I've got to be the perfect parent, and I've got to be this and I've got to be that, and I can't let it go. I started to realise that actually what you can do is you can actually collapse those things together, and pragmatism is the absolute key to that. How do I become useful in doing things and apply that need to be meaningful to different areas of my life? So let's take a day, because it's all very fluffy and theoretical otherwise. And I'll give you me as an example because it's I can't breach my own confidentiality. I was an entrepreneur in a top exporter business, first business I ever had. Went to North America, South America, Australasian market leader, developing high technology with full on-board logic. And my career path before that was that I was a secretary. And one day I decided to buy a business and change it into something completely different. Pragmatically, work-life balance was never going to work for me. I work. That is my life. That is what I do. And that's what I saw with John, and that's what I saw with Doug, and that's what I saw with Peter, and that's why we established rapport and could conduct this research. What I decided to do was take meaningful actions that positioned life around me in a way that I didn't harm it and I could participate in it. And an example is what I came to call pyjama time. Pyjama time is when you drop the CEO act the moment you walk into the door. You put on a profoundly stupid pair of pyjamas. My personal favourites are my Freddy Kruegers and my Angry Birds. And you become a different person who is focused on meaningfully getting it right in your family. It's a different thing from trying to do the work-life balance. It's about taking the fact that you are an innate striver, an innate perfectionist, an innate pragmatism, and you smack that baby right down home. And that's actually what makes it work. That's what I mean about the self-acceptance element of this. This is what you are. The world may wish to dictate something different. It may say that there are things that you need to do and be that are different from that. Actually, you're smart enough to work your own path and to decide how that will look for your family. At one stage, I ran 5 businesses while raising 2 sons on my own. Nothing fell over. Why didn't it fall over? Because it was pyjama time and kids to bed and then back to that computer and back to that technology, and the world is now 24-hour and I can do whatever I like while those children are in bed. So I'm just asking you to reframe, because we talk about these things in society, work-life balance. What the hell is that, John? What is work-life balance? No, work is my life, and I manage to maintain my balance. That's actually the way I went for it, and that's what worked for me. And that's what I'm saying about this being really important. That pragmatism, openness to new ideas, application of new ideas to live in different ways. Because actually, think about that 9% and 3%, you are not normal, and that is normal. Accept it, love it, live with it, excel with it. That's what these people have done. Does it mean a life that is always happy? No. Again, let that aspect of perfectionism go. Does that answer your question okay? Yep.
Amanda,
Yes.
sorry, Sue Trafford over here.
Oh, hello.
And I have a question. Am I right to assume that you interviewed 3 spectacular innovative entrepreneurs, or were there more?
317 all up.
Okay, were some of them women?
Yes.
Were some of them partnerships? Because my experience and my understanding of some of the things you're saying, I wonder if they're gender-based. And I wonder if you have insights about partnerships that are male-female relationship, innovative entrepreneurship versus women's entrepreneurship in the agricultural sector.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm not seeing some of this relating so much to me and my life.
Okay, yep, fair enough. The answer is that not everybody is going to be like this. These three people that we're talking about here are Stellas, and there is a cohort effect that happens when a researcher enters a field environment. They have to be able to develop rapport with the researcher, and the researcher has a high expectation of achievement level. So the people who naturally go towards me tend to be people who naturally have that. So you have to be aware of that in the research. But yes, there were females in the research, quite a large percentage of the cohort of 317, and in the cohort of 60 case studies, 1 was female. She showed no difference whatsoever in the traits. She did show a slight difference in the way that she cognates, the way that she thinks about the traits. She's more punishing towards herself for being perfectionistic, whereas the males were able to deal with the perfectionism a little better than she was able to, until after the research, because the research had an effect. In addition to that, research on female innovative entrepreneurs, again the innovative in there, globally shows that there are actually very low cohort differences between genders, but what is different again is our expectation of the genders, and that affects that way that they think about. And I'll give you an example because, again, come down to the ground. A researcher dealing with women who had failed in businesses, women who showed highly perfectionistic traits, and putting that up against a cohort of males. They had anticipated that the female would feel it emotionally more, and would go out to her friends and be soothed by her friends, whereas the male would tend to bottle up his feelings and would not tell anybody his problems. Exactly the opposite happened. Exactly the opposite. There is a misnomer in the world that women share their feelings and men don't. I give Doug Avery as an example that actually men are very competent at sharing their feelings, and it's valuable, just as valuable when they do, and women are just as likely to bottle them up. So the differences in this group, no, gender didn't make a huge difference. So what is your experience? Where would you see this as not fitting you?
But I'm particularly interested in the whole idea that quite often in farming, the farming relationship and decision-making and ownership of the issues and things that happen are actually very closely partnership, relationship related. It's not in our relationship where Guy makes the decisions and Guy owns the issues, and it's a joint thing. And for me and a lot of the people that we know, that's very similar. So. Yeah. I guess I wonder if that's a protective factor or adds some extra dimension to resilience on farm and in personal lives that maybe is different from. Did you talk to the partners of these?
Yes.
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 And they supported?
Yeah, I talked to the partners, and Lynn, I'm happy for you to speak up if you want to as well. I not only talked to the partners, but the partners were there during interviews, and the partners were also observed and spoke to me on their own. In this sector here, in pragmatism, you'll see the word collaboration. They are highly collaborative individuals, and that includes collaborations in their personal partnerships. Vi and Peter are a team. Lynn and John are a team. Doug and Wendy are a team. But they're not a team on their own. Fraser's in there, Sam and Zoe are in there, and I think all of Peter's children now work in his business. The collaboration starts at source. The I is collaborative, and therefore all partnerships are really valuable, and all partnerships are a part of the business, or businesses up to 40 in Peter's case. Does that answer your question? Excellent. Thank you for that. Has anyone got anything else?
Amanda, Barry Brook here from the Lincoln Foundation.
I need a waving hand.
Yeah, I'm over here.
Right in the light.
I'm thinking about just taking what you've just been talking about a little bit further. The relationship in a marriage between the partners and these perfectionists or these top operators is really important, and there must be some elements of the way they work together, the way they support each other, the way the partner supports these people in particular, the way they work as a team that adds to their performance. Did you study much of that? Did you try and understand how the partner's contribution can be really valuable in making these people superb in what they do?
The answer is yes and no. Yes, from the point of view of understanding how they work together as a team, both in their lives and in their work. No, in that the women were not, or the men were not separated off and studied on their own. We did have a discussion about that, and I think that is a really good future piece of research. Really importantly, I'll go back to that eye, because I think that's a really... Find my way through the slides again. I'm pretty sure I've got this upside down, so I keep going in the wrong direction. See that one there? There is no separation between John and Lynn. That's my experience. There is no separation between Wendy and Doug, and there's none between Vi and Peter. Peter is Vi, and Vi is Peter. Because I am I, but you are me. And I know that's really hard to understand, but every person that we have in our lives provides us with a mirror. We find out who we are by the way people respond to us. It's hard for me with this light because I can't see how you're responding to me. So this poor guy here is getting the whole lot of the attention. I keep looking at him going, is he asleep yet? Seriously, that's actually true. We actually do constantly review who I am by testing the mirror of myself through other people. We see love in another person's eyes. No, we don't. We see a person who is loving and assume they're loving us. Well, this mirror is really important. And the intimate partner is the ultimate mirror. Absolutely the ultimate mirror. I think a really useful thing to understand is, number one, that they are not separate, that they are actually the same person in effect in the business. And I think Jane Hunter, who I spoke to early on, is a really good example of that, because her husband died tragically and suddenly, and she picked up the business and ran. But up until that moment, everyone was pretty sure he was the entrepreneur. Do you see what I mean? Vi is always there, Lynn is always there, Wendy is always there. They think together, they talk together, they plan together, they argue about the hard stuff, and the partner of any innovative entrepreneur has to have one key trait that they cannot do without. They will have to separate and leave if they don't have it, or they will be removed ruthlessly. They must be tolerant. They're not easy. They're not. So your partner, the one that is there and equal but takes the step back and doesn't do the speaking, is a very tolerant individual. Never underrate tolerance. It's powerful. When the eye looks at the tolerant person and sees tolerance, what do they understand? I'm okay. That's a heavy validation. I'm not okay is a heavy invalidation. So that's why you see some people, they go into businesses as a partnership, as a couple, and they absolutely implode, and all of a sudden she's run off with somebody or he's run off with somebody. They're looking for the mirror that's actually going to tolerate them. And we're all doing that. Academics are particularly hard to tolerate. Yeah. Oh, sorry, yes. Yes.
Okay, Amanda, I'm Bill. These three people you've talked about tonight are at the high end of the scale. Out of the other 300, or did you interview sort of people on a far lesser scale of their entrepreneurism? Like
Absolutely, yeah.
Simpleness in life, sort of thing?
Yep, I did. I interviewed a guy, without giving too much away, who created an autonomous vehicle about 25 years ago. And we know Google, who's one of I'm in the Google fan club, they'd pay me to be in the fan club. He created an autonomous vehicle and he undersold it because he didn't understand intellectual property. He felt really caved in by that experience and he never got back on his feet again. He never forgave himself because it was such an imperfect thing to do. But he didn't have the level of pragmatism as these guys. He couldn't get back up. If that was, John's had failures, Peter's had failures. We're not talking about absolute failures here because an innovative entrepreneur can turn failure into learning and manage failure really, really well through pragmatism. But that pragmatism is absolutely key. So what will happen is they may have a really high rating of perfectionistic striving, they may have a low rating of pragmatism, in which case, if when they fall down, they might not get up again. Another one I dealt with had a spectacular failure of 5 businesses while I was actually studying them. And in that case, it was amazing to watch. I had that accountable on there. They took total responsibility for the failure of their businesses. I analysed their businesses. Totally was not their fault. They got thrown in the can. And it wasn't their fault, and they took full responsibility. So, yes, the truth of the matter is that I've surveyed a whole lot. These just happened to be 3 South Island Farmers of the Year. It was a happy coincidence. Yeah. Good? Thanks for the questions, guys.
Thank you, Doctor. Where are you? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, well, you'd have to suggest that was inspiring, that was new, that was outstanding, really. So, yeah, you'd have to give the box a big tick on that one. We're going to move on now, ladies and gentlemen. We're a wee bit behind time, but I think we'd all have to admit and suggest that's okay. We're now going to go and have some dessert. Now, the dessert's a buffet, so make your way up over to the dessert table over on the corner there, plus also a cup of tea and a cup of coffee. And then hopefully the judges have done their business and they've found out who's won and who hasn't and all of those sort of things. So perhaps we might give it, how about we give it a quarter of an hour. We'll adjourn back here, get back to your tables by 9:30 with your desserts, with your cups of teas and coffees, and we'll get on to the business end of the evening. So thank you very much and very well done, Dr. Amanda Lynn. Thank you.